it becomes such a norm to be like, oh yeah, just use a protective style, but then they never tell you the actual effects that may come from the protective style. And I mean, it's to say, yeah, it's protecting your hair, but is it really? Because you're doing this and you're probably not seeing the effects that you're being told that you're supposed to. And I know that it does not relate to everyone, but I also want to say, if you're one of those persons who think it's not relating to you, think about how you utilize your protective styles, because that's something I did say. Like, it's not necessarily the style itself, it's probably how it's being used. How often are you switching up your routine? How are you doing the style? How is the style creating tension on your hair strand? Tension is your biggest problem, because that's the one thing you need to think about. Tension, friction, all of that. That is probably why your hair is not growing. It's probably why you're not seeing any length retention, because your hair is growing. If your hair wasn't growing, you wouldn't have any hair on your head, right? But you're probably not seeing the retention of length that you expecting to see or that you're hoping to see from following somebody else's advice, because you're probably creating lots of problems via the styles that you've been told to use. That's all. That's all I mean. That's all I want to say. Welcome back, guys. I am really excited for today's video, because why am I so I'm really excited for today's video because I want to talk about growing your hair. I've done so many videos recently in regards to hair care. I talk about things I don't like in regards to hair care. I talk about things I love, like what I think your best routine is. And I feel like it's only right to talk about hair growth. Now, let's put a PSA out. Your hair grows about half an inch every month, which means your hair grows about 6 inches every year. So on average, your hair should be growing naturally 6 inches at the end of every year. Some people, based on genetics, can grow their hair a lot faster, and some people, based on genetics, take a longer time. And with that being said, we also need to understand the fact that hair health plays a very, very large role in how your hair growth shows and it is visible to you, right? Because I personally know that my hair, I don't necessarily see the growth as I'm looking at my hair, but I know it's growing because when I blow it out or when I straighten it, I'm like, oh my god, it's grown this much. I cut my hair off literally 1 year to date. Well, 1 year and some weeks to date. But 1 year from then to genuinely past my ear, like my ear ends in hair growth, like from the center of my hair to hair, like the entire way down, that is my hair length. It's grown quite a bit. And I know that it's been through setting constant of a certain routine. It has a lot to do with what I've been using in my hair to maintain it, but also how I style my hair. And I want to talk more about the styling aspect, because I feel like when I touched upon the products I think you should be using in your hair, that kind of for me explained what you need to be doing in regards to maintaining your hair health. And I'm talking about styles that accentuate or add on to your hair health in this video, right? First thing, I want to define what protective style is. I think a lot of people think that protective style is anything that covers your hair. And I know, like, in certain like that could be like a wig, braids, sew-ins, anything like that. So like adding extensions to your hair in a lot of people's minds is what a protective style is. It's basically protecting your hair from the environment in whatever way you can. Now, a lot of people use protective styles, the way in which we understand protective styles, to use certain hairstyles, and those aren't actually protective styles, right? We've got, especially as black people, and I know like not everyone who watches my channel is going to be black, but this is specifically for them at this point. For a lot of black people, you put on braids, you put on wigs, you put on sew-ins, you have your wash and goes, your braid outs, your twist outs, the entire shebang. And some of these are protective styles and some of them aren't. And I feel like we need to understand what should be defined as a protective style in regards to how you're styling your hair for you to understand whether or not your hair is going to be growing when using this style, right? So let's talk about the natural hair first, because I feel like it's a segue, right? Let's talk about the natural hair and then the added extensions and like how they affect hair, right? Your natural hair. You've got, like I said, your twist outs, your braid outs, your wash and goes, the entire thing. And a lot of that has to do with just letting your hair out into the environment. Now, there's a good side to that and there's a bad side to that. One, you're allowing your hair to breathe. When you just let it out like that, you're allowing it to breathe because you're not constantly touching it. Sometimes. Some people are very obsessed with touching their hair when it's in that state, which can lead to a lot of breakage because you're removing natural and essential oils, and therefore you're stripping your hair, especially your hair shaft, the end shaft, of that protective barrier that it needs to ensure its health and maintenance and retention. That is very important. Now, not saying that you shouldn't have your washouts. I'm not saying you shouldn't have your leave-ins and your leave-outs and your braid-outs, your twist-outs, your braid-outs, your leave-outs, any of that. Not saying any of that. What I am saying is we need to understand that friction is the biggest enemy when it comes to these types of styles, right? So if you are planning to do a wash and go, and if you are planning to do a twist out or a braid out, you need to remember the fact that your hair touching your clothes, especially if you wear cotton is really, really good at creating friction. Sucks to say because we're all basically told to wear cotton, linen. They're very good at friction, right? Because of the way in which the material is spun and sewn. Polyester as well. The only the only materials I know for a fact will not add to this would be silk and satin, which is why you have your silk and satin bonnets and your hair wraps and your hair ties and all of that, right? Or even microfiber. Microfiber materials are very good at preventing friction because of the way in which the material is created. Now, not saying that it's always going to result in friction and therefore hair breakage and any of that. But what I am saying is you're more susceptible to these things if you're going to be doing these styles. So you need to think about that. If it is that you're looking for maximum retention, you want your hair up and away from any clothing that may result in friction and breakage for your hair away. No. Having your hair pulled back into a ponytail every single day, 24/7, also has side effects, right? Because that can create something called tensional alopecia. Um, what happens with tensional alopecia is really sad, especially because it happens to a lot of Black women very frequently, and they don't seem to understand the causes of it. And it's the constant pulling or tugging of a specific area of your hair that leads to genuinely your hair bulb being damaged and not reproducing the hair strand. Right. Your hair bulb getting damaged, especially in continuous places over time, will lead to tensional alopecia. It's a really sad effect, and it's very common around your hair. So it's most likely seen at the front of your head, or at the back of your head, or at the side of your head. And in a lot of cases of people who either part their hair consistently or pull it up in ponytails, you tend to find it in the center of your hair or even in that part. You tend to see there's a lot less strands in those areas. I know that sometimes, especially if you hear the same style every week. I know for me personally, it happens where I'm washing my hair and my hair naturally parts like that. It happens naturally now, and I know that has a lot to do with the fact that my hair is always in. I always part my hair like that, right? I never not do that. That can lead to tension alopecia because I'm constantly tugging my hair from hair, and I'm damaging whatever hair bulbs would be here that ensure hair growth, right? So we need to pay attention to that as well. If it is that you're looking towards hair growth, so what we need to be understanding now is you need to stop having your hair coming in contact with anything that creates friction. But we also need to ensure that we are maintaining different styles that do not tug at our hair strands from the root that may damage your hair bulb. Continuous styling in the same way is a very common way of damaging your hair bulb, and so we need to find different styles, which I know is ridiculous because I'm like, you can't do this and you can't do that, but there are different ways. So I'm not saying that you can't. I'm never gonna say you can't wear your twist outs or you can't wear your braid outs, but we need to ensure that it's not the same thing that we're doing every day. You can have your ponytails, but it's not the same hairstyle every day. Have it change your hairstyle, which is ridiculous. I know, but like if you're gonna be doing those kind of styles, change your style every day. If as often as possible, you need to be changing that style. Not to say that you need to be manipulating your hair very often, but you need to be having, if you're going to be utilizing a style, you need to be not utilizing the same style next week, right? You need, your hair needs constant change in that regard to ensure that it doesn't get used to a routine and therefore damage itself. When we're talking about tension alopecia, I think the next thing is to go into braids. Like we're in that era of like micro braids, right? We're heading back to like micro braids, micro twists, the whole shebang. You know, you leave out, you braid one part, leave out the rest. One thing we need to remember when it comes to braiding, especially when it comes to micro braiding, is you are setting up a lot of tension in a very small area of your head. When you braid your hair, and I don't know lots of cases when you braid your hair, you braid it down to your ass or down to your ankles. Very uncomfortable is what I think that is, because that looks like it's a lot of work. My own natural hair, when it was long, was a lot of work. I'm not to mention any extensions I have, which replicate how my hair used to be. Lots of work, right? But you guys do you. But I think we need to remember the fact that the smaller the braid, the more likely there is tension in a very specific area of your head. The smaller the braid, the more likely the chance is that if you tug on that, and I know because you're going to be having your long braids down to wherever, you're going to have that possibility when you're pulling your hair up and you're doing this and you're doing that and you're styling it whatever ways, when your bag catch it and it's not pull, all of that, it's going to create friction, it's going to create tension, and it's going to start pulling. Now when it pulls, it's going to be pulling on that very specific area. And if this is something that is done constantly, because I know most girls keep their braids in for at least a minimum of 2 months. I know y'all keep it in for that for a minimum of 2 months. It's going to be a lot for your hair for that very small period of time. Right. So you're going to constantly be having, especially in the back area of your hair, because I know that's where it's most common when you have that kind of tugging in braids, where it's the back area or the back circum the back dimension, right? It's more likely that you're going to realize that you're losing a lot more hair in those areas. The same thing happens with the front. When you are pulling your hair back into your braids and your ponytails and whatever styles you're doing, you're creating a lot of tension in this very small area of your head. And by extension, you're going to be removing a lot of your hair strands from there. That is very, very common when you see people who wear a lot of braids and they don't have, and their hairline is very damaged. That's the reason why, because you've created so much tension that your hair is basically you've ripped your hair out unintentionally and unknowingly. Sometimes, and this isn't to scare anyone, but sometimes when you're combing your hair out after 2 months and you realize, oh my god, I have so much hair from hair loss. It's not just natural hair loss. A lot of that has to do with the fact that when you're pulling on your braids, it's pulled out some of your hair strands that were still very healthy. So again, it's not to say that you can't have your braids and you can't have them small, but we need to understand how it is that we're going to be utilizing style with protection, right? If you're going to be doing it small, you need to ensure that you do it in a way, and then if you're going to be manipulating it, you're going to be doing it in a way that protects that area of your hair and does not create any specific kind of tension in whatever areas you are manipulating, right? That's what I'm saying. It's better, and I don't understand why it's such a big deal, why you have to have your hair in like micro whatever's. It's okay to have them big. It's easier one when it comes to pulling them out, because you're not going to be spending 10-12 hours on a quarter of your head just to get them out, right? But I understand if it's just for your personal preference. Do you just remember that, right? Let's talk about your wigs, your lace fronts. Now, the thing with the lace fronts is when you glue down that part of your hair, you a lot of people tend to glue it down on them hairline. Why? Why? You have real estate. And I know I'm specific. I'm like Rihanna before I big. But there's a plenty of real estate, right? Don't waste it. Don't bring it down too far where your hairline and your eyebrow meet. Should never be happening. But bring it far enough where at least bring your wig gap just above your hairline. It shouldn't be on your hairline, because when you're pulling it off, you're ripping off your hair, babes. And when you do that, and I know that a lot of people who wear wigs constantly, especially lace front kind of wigs, you're wearing it constantly. You don't want to be damaging your hair any further than your hair probably damaged already. Braid having your hair braided down and covered by a wig is fantastic when it comes to protective styles. The problem is if you're gluing down the hair, your wig cap or your lace front on your hairline, you're creating more problems than you are creating solutions. Because the rest of your hair might be nice and long and flowing and whatever, but then your hair front is picky picky. Why? Don't do that. I'm sorry. Don't do that. Do better. Do better. I I'm sorry. This is just like the wig story is a whole specific heartache for me because I feel like I love when I see a woman in a wig and it looks fantastic, right? But looking a certain way should never come at the cost of your actual health. And I know it's kind of over dramatic to say your hairline is your health, but it's a part to you. And I feel like a lot of people tend to compensate for wearing things like that because of that hair damage. It should never be, and you should never be contributing to it to fit a certain standard to make yourself feel better. It's not worth it, you know. And I love to see people with wigs. Nobody cares. Bringing back to the waist situation. We can see a lace, nobody cares. Seeing your lace isn't a problem, babes. Do your hair is a part. You are protecting your hair in whatever way you feel is necessary. Do you? Okay. I did not spend the money that you spent to get your hair. I cannot judge you when it comes to you wanting to protect it and put on whatever you want to put on. The only thing I will be judging you on is the baby hairs. I'm sorry. I will judge you on that no matter how much money you pay. Your hairline, once it's gone, babe, a lot of the times everything else will come back and your hairline will still be there. Like it's the one thing that is so hard to bring back to its full capacity, and I don't want anybody to be disadvantaged for any reason, right? So think about when you're putting on your wig cap, if you're putting it on that hair on your hairline, because that might be causing some of the problems that you're probably witnessing if you're seeing any excessive hair loss in that area. With sew-ins or glue-ins, I don't know if people still do glue wigs. Do people still do that? I don't know. Like I honestly don't know because I feel like we've all left glue-on wigs for lace fronts, but then also use sew-ins now. Like sew-ins have always been a thing, but like people are doing sew-ins more now than they would like a glue-on wig because glue-on wigs are so damaging. I would never ever tell somebody to use a glue wig. It's so damaging, mostly because a lot of the time you tend to paste down the glue on your entire wig cap and it seeps into your actual hair. And then when you're removing the wig cap, when it's all said and done, it's so ingrained into your hair. You probably end up cutting so much of your hair off and you don't even realize until after. So glue wigs I would not recommend at all. Like those aren't a particular style. Those are torture devices in this community. Torture devices. I would not recommend it. But sew-ins and yeah, sew-ins. Now with sew-ins, you have two different styles. You have the leave-out style, with also with lace fronts, but like very rare with lace fronts do you have leave-outs. It's mostly clip-ins, and clip-ins are like pretty easy because there's like very minimal damage. Clip-ins are very similar to sew-ins, except that they're not actually staying in your hair. You just have a nice clip, and you just clip it into that braid, and it just stays for whatever day you want. Now, clip-ins you tend to have a lot more leave-out because you probably want to have the front of your hair to make it look a bit more natural. And also with sew-ins, you kind of have that with the front of your hair is obviously it's natural. But with clip-ins, you tend to just it's more of like a one day thing. Like clip-ins aren't really done as a long term protective thing. Clip-ins are more so if you go into an event and you want to just done, right? Versus if you want to have it for like the whole week or for the whole month, right? So I would never say that's an excessive thing because leaving your hair up for like one day, as long as you're not adding excessive heat constantly, because heat over time in a area is very damaging, and I would never recommend that. But if as long as that's not the case, then you should be fine with a clip-in. So that's all I'm saying. You should be fine. Should. Um, but with a sew-in, I feel like sewing's a little bit more long term, because they're very similar to wigs, where you do them in the sense, or even braids, you do them in the sense where you're hoping to have them in for like a month, 2 months, 3 months, right? So when you do that, you a lot of the times tend to, if you're doing a leave out, you would tend to leave the front of your hair, right? So you'd probably have like this area of your hair left out, and you'd probably curl it or straighten it, whatever, depending on the style that you're using. And sometimes if you're not leaving out, then the entire thing is protected. You're very safe, right? Sewings, I feel like are, oh my god, I have one more thing. I'll talk about that. But sewings, I think, are like so versatile in a sense where if you don't want to leave out, you don't have to, because there's so many ways where you can make a sewing look very natural. And I would recommend sewings. If I were to recommend one protective extension style, it would be sewings, because you can manipulate a sewing to make it look as natural as possible without ever having to put any effort onto your hair. Now, like with every other extension, there is a risk of tension in regards to pulling. You're never not at risk for that. I would never say nobody's at risk for that. You're always at risk for that, because that is genuinely something that comes along at the extensions. You are putting your hair at risk via tugging. However, I think because you're braiding your hair down, there's a less risk of it being a specific area. It's usually probably like the entire thing that you're tugging. You're probably tugging your entire head, which creates less tension than the others. Just like with your wig, like with your wigs, it's generally just take your hairline. There's nothing else that is really damaging your hair. Wigs are again a very good option in regards to protective styles. It is just maintaining your hairline health. Now with sewings, it's kind of the same thing. There's very little risk unless you're having a leave out. And I would never recommend a leave out, because again, like I said, there's so many ways now to create a sewing style where you don't have to showcase the front, like party hair left out to the environment. Now, with the last one, and this is the one that I do so often, I can't believe I forgot it, crochet. Crochet is the most damaging. Like, crushes are even worse than braids. And it sucks to say because I do it so often, right? So I'm just like the pot calling the kettle black with that one. But they are the most damaging of all extension styles. I know that hands down, because I do them very often. Crochets are so specific, and that's because depending on the way you crochet your hair, and I'm not talking about the ones where you braid them down. Well, you have two different styles, so I need to like talk about that. You also have the styles where like you have your wigs or your sewings where it's braided down, and then you crochet the that braid. So you crochet the hair into the braid. That is less damaging. That is probably what I would recommend. However, I think we've kind of moved on as a society from where you're braiding your entire hair down to that, to now where it's very individualistic. You're doing them individually, right? So each crochet now is like that spin. You have that strand, and it's parted and it looks more seamless, right? Those are very damaging, because a lot of the times you're either braiding your hair down, which means when that hair is in there and you're tugging on that, that's tugging the entire thing out, right? That's one. Also, or if you have an elastic band, which is again very common. So those two ways are very common. If you're doing the elastic route, you are very much causing friction on your hair roots, causing friction to the T. Because not only are you causing friction from the hair itself on your hair, you're causing friction from the hair rubbing against elastic bands, which then rub against your hair strand. Very sorry to say. And again, very sad, because I do it very often. I love my hair when it's crocheted. It's very easy. I don't normally keep my hair in, I don't normally keep extensions in for more than 2 weeks anyways. So for me, it's not that big of a deal. I'm okay with it. I know what I'm putting at risk. Like, I know the effects of it, and I don't normally do it for long term. I normally crochet my hair once and then leave my hair for like 3 months to just breathe. So I don't do any of these styles back to back to back to back. So I've never felt like I'm in a position where I'm creating that much tension. But that is me. I've come up with a system that I know works for my own hair and will prevent as little damage as possible, right? So before you pick your style, think about these things and kind of understand what way you want to go. If it is that you want advice on what your routine needs to look like for your overall hair health, I do have another video about that. I did that a couple weeks ago, so I will have that linked. I also will have another video out probably in the future. Not definitely in the future. I'll have another video in regards to what I think so far are the best protective styles and how I do them and how I've utilized those styles, because I've left my hair out so often. If you've watched my videos over the past 6 months, this is definitely, you will notice that my hair is just out all the time. There is no regard for environmental health and safety in regards to my hair. It's just out all the time. I'm just so lackadaisical with the way I do my hair, and it's still growing, and my hair is still very healthy. But that's because I know my hair and I know what I'm doing to limit friction, limit tension, limit breakage, damage, that whole thing. And it is a mixture of the protective style that I use, but also the actual routine that I have for my hair. So, those two things culminate to then create the routine that I feel works best for my hair. And it does, because my hair is growing and my hair is pretty long considering it's only been a year and I'm doing all these things with my hair that I probably didn't think I was going to be doing um, last year this time. But with that being said, it's been wonderful, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye, guys.